everybody, from Uniting the Cults and History Flights Productions. It's The Hidden Faith, the undefeated and truly independent investigation of the Baha'i faith and related power cults, such as the one at Wayfarer Studios that Steve Sarowitz, Justin Baldoni, and Jamie Heath spun around them. So why don't we kick it off first with the amazing channel Go Do Your Own Research, who has been doing a ton of research on this. Most of the mainstream media is saying now that the settlement is benefiting Justin Baldoni because he didn't have to pay her a dime, but she can still claim damages under something called 47.1. Can you please explain to us where the case is right now and what that means for Blake?
So you say most of the mainstream media, like that is the narrative that is being put out. So it really depends where your bias lies. But technically, the 47.1 clause, according to her lead legal counsel, Michael Gottlieb, was completed back in September.
Michael Gottlieb is a partner at the Wilkie firm in LA, a First Amendment and crisis specialist. And for the past few years, he's been Blake Lively's lead litigator. We're going to talk about the impact of this case, whether Blake regrets bringing it in the first place, which parts of it are still going, and ultimately whether anyone will walk away a winner. So one of you guys has to be wrong here. Give me your 30-second pitch for why your client won here, because I understand no money changed hands during the settlement. So confirm that's accurate and then tell us why your client won.
So let me tell you why our client is happy, ecstatic with this settlement. The reason that our client is happy with this settlement is because it gives her the power and the opportunity to pursue what we believe is her most potent and powerful claim in a way that is efficient, in a way that is final, in a way that the defendants have no appeal rights over, and in a way that cuts off most of the noise that would be surrounding this case and lets us get straight to the core issue of how the defendants retaliated against her, specifically the retaliatory lawsuit that they filed that called her a liar, that branded her a liar.
This was for when she asserted the sexual harassment claim. He filed a defamation case against her saying that she was lying. And there is a specific law in California that says if you do that, it's designed to protect victims and people that may be afraid of coming forward.
Up and fight back. And that's one of the points of Section 47.1 on this law in California. The legislature recognized that most people don't have the ability to fight back against a large defamation lawsuit when it's brought by a large employer or somebody with a lot of money. And so the law is supposed to operate to protect against retaliatory lawsuits like this. Blake thought it was important to stand up for those principles. She still thinks it's important to stand up for those principles. That's why we've focused on this element of the claim. That's why we have moved to pursue this element of the claim. It is more powerful. It is faster. Like I said before, we think we've already met almost all of the tests in it. She just has to prove that she is a prevailing defendant in a defamation action. She's proved that. She has to prove that she made her complaints about sexual harassment or retaliation without malice. We think we've already proved that. We think they've essentially admitted to that in the statement that they've made when they've said her claims deserve to be heard. We think other parts of evidence in the case also bear that out. So there's not much left to do in this particular aspect of the litigation except for quantify the damage that's been done to her. And I think that when that process unfolds, you're going to see a powerful tool of accountability that will shine a light for others that face this kind of problem.
So procedurally, how does this continue? Are we looking at motions filed within the month? Like, can we get a resolution by the end of the year?
It's unknown. So we had a fully briefed motion. Both sides sent in papers on this. I think it was complete in September.
So they had this planned all along that they were going to be claiming on 47.1, regardless of the outcome of the case.
Okay.
In terms of it being a win for Baldoni paying a settlement, most people, I think...
Well, he didn't pay any money, apparently.
Well, this is the thing. 47.1 still has to be heard in the court. There could still be a trial. There still could be a hearing for it. if the judge doesn't automatically rule it. So yeah, their legal counsel, Brian Friedman, was a bit preemptive the way he jumped into the media to say that it was a victory for them. But most people feel like a settlement being reached. I know you're saying it hasn't been paid, but it's not necessarily a win. Normally, it's, if someone wins, they win. They have their day in court. They prove themselves innocent. That's not what is happening here. That's not the case.
Yeah, Justin
So,
hasn't proven anything. He didn't
right.
have to.
In fact, all the evidence, if you genuinely look at the evidence, shows that most of what he was accused of was there in black and white. We saw that sexual harassment wasn't covered legally from a legal standpoint, not that he didn't.
Right. Basically, she was a contractor and it was thrown out on
They
a
have
technicality.
they have this thing called Title VII,
Right.
which,
In the United
I
States.
mean, I'm catching up on US law, US employment law.
As the
as it
president is
goes.
shredding it, apparently, by refusing to enforce gender discrimination rules for trans people, and in fact going after colleges for having trans students at all. But that's neither here nor there.
I mean, the point is, it makes a mockery of how he presented himself before the whole saga started, because he claimed to be against toxic masculinity. He claimed to be an ally to women. He claimed that you should listen to women. He had made content in support of Me Too. And what he has done with this case has been the exact opposite.
Well, this is the MO of the Baha'i faith. They claim one thing with their mouth and then they do something else. And that usually means being condescending to critics, to LGBTQ people, to women who say, hey, why aren't there women on your highest leadership, the Universal House of Justice? And they're like, ask again later, like a magic 8-ball, because their literal founder's son said, the answer will become clear as the midday sun later. Sorry. To a feminist in 1903 who wrote him about it. Speaking of which, Dale, do you want to briefly give your experience with the Baha'i faith and why you left?
I was originally a Southern Baptist. I was raised in that religion. I underwent the standard born again experience, which I do not recommend for anyone, for the record. I consider it to be psychologically harmful, but I went through that. I joined a church, a Southern Baptist church, and I was a member of that for about 5 years. Then, after 5 years of being totally brainwashed by evangelical Christian dogmas, I broke away from that for various reasons. Knowing about the history of Christianity, knowing things about the Bible, and knowing things about the history of the Southern Baptist Convention itself was enough to make me totally reject everything. And so for the first time in my life, I stopped believing in any religion. And after looking around for a little while, I joined a Unitarian Universalist church in an effort to find out what I truly was. And then after about 7 or so years as a UU, I actually became rather disappointed because I felt that we weren't doing enough against racism. And then I discovered the Baha'i faith, and the Baha'is were very active, or so they said, on racial unity issues. I felt that they were doing more for that and against racism than UUs were, and they truly believed in God, and their belief in God was their motivation for doing all the things that they were supposed to be doing. So after being, evangelized at special meetings in private homes called firesides.
Well, they call it teaching.
Yeah, teaching. Yeah. It's really proselytism, although they don't want to call it that. I became a Baha'i.
How old was you then?
What's that?
And when was this? For context.
I was in my 20s when I became a Baha'i.
Right.
I was a Baptist in my teens, and I became a Baha'i in my 20s. So for about 8 years, I was a dedicated Baha'i. And then I started realizing that I had never actually subjected the Baha'i faith to the same critical analysis I once had Christianity. So for several months in the year 2004, starting that summer, I isolated myself from the rest of the community and just looked at things through my own eyes for several months without taking any input from other Baha'is to try to persuade me, because you shouldn't need that if something is obviously true. By January of 2005, my faith had completely fallen apart. I realized this was a cult, a harmful cult, a dishonest cult. And so I wrote a letter to the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is, resigning my faith. And right after I got a reply from them saying they accepted my requisition, I went right back to the UU church. And shortly after I rejoined the UUs, they actually began doing things about racism that they should have done decades ago. So I've been a very dedicated UU ever since. I won't join any other religion now because I feel like I've been lied to for so much of my life, and UUs have never lied to me. Okay, let me put it that way. And after I rejoined the UUs, I stayed silent against the Baha'i faith for about 2 years. And then in, I think, 2017, I came out in 2015. And then in 2017, I started publishing against the faith, which got me a lot of attention. And so over the years, I found myself in battle against my former Baha'is, which disappointed me because they did not seem quite as intelligent as I thought they should be. If they are the true religion, they should be among the most knowledgeable and spiritual people in the world. And they came across as idiots to me. I joined Reddit and I became a member of r/x Baha'i. And I found myself in more battles against Baha'is. Baha'is would invade the subreddit to attack us, and they would also attack us in other places. And I was really disappointed and appalled at how treacherous some of them turned out to be. If I was still a Baha'i when I joined Reddit in 2018, I would have left afterwards because I could not tolerate their obvious bigotry. So I'm now a moderator at the ex-Baha'i subreddit. I finally became one, because I proved myself through my activism. So that's where I stand now. I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and I'm an ex-Baha'i, and I'm an atheist.
I'm all of those things except for ex-Baha'i because I never joined the cult myself. However, I was love bombed by a girl that I was interested in who gave me the book A Thief in the Night by William Sears about the 1844 phenomenon.
I've read that.
There's another video that talks more in depth about that. But anyway, I was in a relationship with this woman for 11 years of my life. And every day, whether I knew it or not, she was trying to control me through passive aggressive love bombing, through condescending down to me if I gave her so much as the slightest criticism. Because their whole MO is staying in their comfortable intellectual shallow pool and attacking people. Not necessarily that every Baha'i does that, because
Yeah.
I'm friends with LGBTQ Baha'i experience who left, but it's very difficult to understand dissenting opinions inside the cult because they are silenced through pre-publication review of every writing, through the fact that backbiting, or pretty much going to anybody other than administrators about problems that you have with other people inside this community, is prohibited as backbiting, and that people are worked to the bone. We've seen recent posts on RX Baha'i with people talking about that. We've seen recent posts from another friend of mine talking about how she was treated when she left with basically a customer satisfaction survey like a disinterested cable provider.
Yeah. To be perfectly fair, I was also in a bad marriage for 5 years to a straight up narcissist who came from a family of total rednecks, but she wasn't a Baha'i. It seems there's toxic personalities in all religious
Oh
communities.
yeah, totally. But I think that the unique thing about the Baha'i faith is that conflict is silenced. Nobody really talks about problems, except to a handful of disinterested administrators who are only interested in making sure that you're satisfied enough to not challenge them. Because again, the minute you criticize them, they start turning on you. That's what happened to a supposed friend of mine when I told him about the Justin Baldoni stuff. He said that he was ordered by the administration not to read the New York Times article.
So much
The-
for
all
independent
those-
investigation of truth, huh?
Yeah, independent investigation of truth is another one of their doublespeak things that they say. Um, what they don't say is that you could speak to the dead, but apparently Justin Baldoni took it that way, or that you can religiously discriminate against people. But that's exactly what Steven Sarowitz did to poor Celeste Smith. Do you want to talk briefly about that, Dior?
Sure. Yeah, so it was interesting. Obviously, I did a little bit of research into the Baha'i at the beginning. I wish I had had this conversation with you back at the beginning of last year, was when I first started making videos about this. So, yeah, the race thing was what I saw from like Baha'i content websites and stuff, was that they had this idea that racism didn't exist,
Or should
and that their way of dealing with it was to show, for example, a black woman who said she'd sat next to Ku Klux Klan members in the church and they were all really nice to her. So what was the problem?
Send me
I
that link.
swear down that is on the Baha'i.org website.
Oh gosh.
I remember one time we went to this church in Frederick, and I remember going into the church, and when I walked into the church, all the diverse people were on the right side, and there was a few white guys on the left side. And I remember, because they're always saying, you know, black people, why do black people sit together? So when I walk into this church, it was a group that was putting on something about race unity. So I would find those things to go to. So I walk into the door, and in my head it says, don't sit with the people you know, go sit over here with these white people. So I listen to the voice in my head. I usually do better when I listen to that voice. So I go over there and I sit with these guys, and the preacher's talking about whatever he's talking about. And then so a couple times, you know, he'll say something and I'll turn to the guys and say blah, 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 blah. And they just kind of sat there a little bit stoic and they didn't say much. And I thought, you don't have to say anything, at least you're here, you know, and I go ahead and listen to whatever. So afterwards, this lady comes up to me and she says, what's your name? I said, Barbara Talley. She said, where do you live? I said, Germantown. And she said, it's just amazing how you interacted with the Klan. I'm like, what Klan? Those guys, that was a Klan. I said, wait a minute, you're the newspaper. What are you printing here? I don't want those guys to find me. I came home and I said, Gil, he said, what have you done now? I said, well, I didn't know they were Klan. I was chatting with them and whatever. They didn't say anything. They just sat there. But I was like, okay, I'm here. You're here. It's okay. You showed up. The second time I ran into the Klan, my babysitter was a white woman who lived in a trailer. And when her daughter got married, she decided to have a wedding at a firehouse. There's a little room upstairs, you know. And so I go to the firehouse with my present. She loved my little daughter. And so I'm a part of the family with the wedding, you know. I go there, and as soon as I park in front of the firehouse. I get out of my car. I have a present in hand, and the guy just says, over there. I mean, he just points like over there. So I'm thinking maybe, I don't know. So I just follow, you know, a guy in a uniform says, go that way. You just kind of do that. Go across the street. And from my purview across the street, I could see that upstairs were all of my friends that were getting married. And they're looking out the window like, what are you doing over there? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing over there. The guy just sent me over there. And they're like looking out the window. And then I look around and I see what's happening. And there's all of these black people on the corner. Now, mind you, at that point, 20-something years ago, there were not that many black people in this little town. You know, maybe almost in the state, but there was not in that town. And so then I look down the street and I see the Klan coming. And they're in full dress. And I'm thinking, what's going on? And then this is an NAACP. They're picketing. The fire chief had evidently called one of the fire men a derogatory name, and the NAACP was there protesting. I just happened to show up in the middle I'm going to a wedding, I think. And they're saying, come on over. And I'm thinking, now the Klan's coming. I'm thinking, do I go to the wedding? Do I stay here? Now this is activism kind of stuff, right? So I'm like, wait, you gotta wait, you know. So the Klan comes to me. They're coming down the street, walking. And I get as close as I am right here. I mean, I literally could I literally could have tripped them. I mean, and with that dress thing they were wearing, we could have taken them. And I'm thinking, like, we could really take them, I mean, they can't even run, and they got all that long robe on and, And so, but and you think, what do you say when you knowingly come that close to the Klan? Realizing my history, Harriet Tubman history, what they've done, what do you do when you get that close to make your statement? When I got that close, I looked in the eyes of the person standing there in front of me. And because all I could see was eyes. They're covered up. And I saw that it was a child. Some tall, lanky kid. And at the time I had 5 children, and all I could feel was empathy and sorrow that somebody had spoon-fed this kid so much hate that all he could do was return hate. He wasn't born that way. We know that, you're born pure. Children are born pure, children are born whole. Just add a little or a lot of love and watch beautiful lives unfold.
Wow.
And there's just so much on there that was giving me like such big red flags. And then when I looked on Wikipedia, it said that homosexuality is forbidden.
That was a huge,
Um,
big red flag for me.
So I just thought it was really weird because Wayfarer put out a film about a same-sex relationship like in 2024 called The Boy, about an Indian boy or something, The Boy or something. Yeah, so there's a lot of conflicts of interests going on, or I can't think of the exact word, contradictions between what they say and what they do. And when you said about, not being allowed to deal with confronting issues or whatever, like one thing that came through very strongly through the evidence is how much Justin would go to his Baha'i group WhatsApp group chat and bitch about stuff that was happening on the movie, like daily. And the language
No
used was,
backbiting allowed, huh?
the language used was so combative. And I mean, it really like freaked me out because I was just like, where's the faith here? This is just, oh my God, Justin, how dare she do that to you? Like they were all egging him on and making him feel justified in his feelings instead of saying, like, man, we're about peace and love. Like, But anyway, so Celeste. So there was another black guy that we found out had already sued Wayfarer. So in 4 years, like, they only started Wayfarer Foundation in 2021. And in 4 years, they've had 4 lawsuits.
Yeah.
How crazy is that? So the first one we heard about was this guy, Shane Norman, who I don't know if you've heard of Zeus TV, but it's, how can I put it politely? It's trash. It's trash reality TV. But obviously, he's very much engaged with the black community. So they hired him to kind of rebrand the Man Enough podcast. And then he got accused of sexual harassment.
Of course he did.
And while he was working there, this is probably in around, it was 2020 because it was during BLM. So then he sued them for racial discrimination because there was a investigation showing that they know how to do investigations of his sexual harassment. And then he said he got fired for racial discrimination because he was posting about Black Lives Matter.
Wow.
So then we come to, and then so one of the pieces of evidence in his court case was that Steve Sarowitz had said on the interview, we need someone that looks like you.
I think that the on its face reason why they fired him was because as Baha'is, you are not allowed to talk about politics at all.
Right.
Because they think that the old world is collapsing and they're
talk about Iran.
Yeah.
But if you read their
the discrimination in Iran
if
against
you
them.
read their workplace handbook, policy and procedures, all of that, it says you should not be discriminated for race, religion, politics, anything. So they obviously, and that's why he was asked in his deposition, Justin Baldoni, like, is it a Baha'i organization? He's like, no, we had a discussion about it, but we were like, it wasn't going to be an official Baha'i organization. It was just going to use it as inspiration.
Baha'i inspired, yeah, because the
So they,
Wayfarer is a theme from the Seven Valleys. It's a quote from the Seven Valleys. That's what the name comes
okay,
from.
interesting. So then we come to 2023. I did make a deep dive video about the case. Celeste was a successful public arts fundraiser and member of the Nation of Islam. And she said she was headhunted and actually coerced, or they put a lot of pressure on her to leave her job and come and work for Wayfarer, obviously knowing full well of her background and her beliefs. So she said she did really well at her job. She was promoted. And then it kind of kicked off. I think it was the beginning of 24, when they went on a retreat or some kind of like work conference. And the subject of the what's happening in Palestine came up. And you'd have to read the actual case, but essentially Steve Sarowitz made it clear, well, his feelings against Palestine, basically, and that anyone that didn't agree with him, he had very harsh words for. And she said that after that, she stood up to him and was like, I don't follow your beliefs. And apparently he was like very aggressive. He shouted. And this is at a work conference. Do you know what I mean? So she said, like, they've come back to work and the problem started. She said she started to feel harassed, discriminated again. She started to be shut out of meetings, which she fully believes is because of how she expressed her belief. And she feels like, obviously, he was trying to bully her into giving up her beliefs to be of the same thinking as he is.
I am not surprised at all, because while they say that they don't racially discriminate, Abdul Baha said the most racist things about Africans, like that they were savages. He was incredibly condescending to non-Abrahamic beliefs and even to Abrahamic ones.
This is so crazy because one big thing talking about Reddit, these people in the Reddit comments that support Baldoni have gone on and on about Blake Lively being racist. I'm shocked about this. This should have been revealed a long time ago. Like, there's been so much arguments about this because I mean, what they focus on is the fact that she got married on a former plantation and that she once put loads of fake tan on to pretend to be like a New Jersey girl, which isn't even blackface, but they tried to compare it to blackface. And these are the two massive issues that make her a racist, when, as far as I know, she tried really genuinely to kind of make up for the fact that she was outed as getting married on a plantation. She made donations. She made an official apology with her husband. The dressing up with the fake tan, I don't even consider that to be worth defending. I mean, not as in defending, as in I have to defend it. It's like, I don't consider that to be
a massive issue.
An appropriate accusation. So then we find out, because Justin Baldoni's written a book, that in his book, he said that he went to a wedding where they threw cotton at the bride and groom, and his black friend was really upset.
Justin Baldoni is going viral right now for a story he wrote about in his book about going to a plantation wedding. Here's the book in question. It's titled Man Enough. Well, to give you guys some context, he attended a wedding for a couple of friends that he had at this plantation, and for whatever reason, the bride and groom that Justin Baldoni was going to celebrate with decided that it would be a great idea for the guests to throw cotton at the bride and groom as they went back down the aisle. Of course, there were people who were upset by this, and Justin Baldoni writes about this in his book, saying he doesn't understand why their friend Kay, that's the name he gave this person who sent an email pretty upset about this moment, was upset. Actually, he said that he went and defended the couple who had authorized the cotton throwing. He went on to say that this has nothing to do with race, and he said he and his wife used their privilege and flipped the narrative onto their own emotions and tried to make themselves into the victim here, that the couples were a victim and that this woman was just being sensitive and that it made it about her. I mean, to me, I think it's so just odd to go and like have a wedding at a plantation to begin with, but then to go and have people throw cotton at you. Like, wake up. I think one of the reasons why this segment is going viral is because, one, it's unbelievable, but two, Ryan and Blake Lively actually got married at a plantation. What is up with these rich people in entertainment and plantation weddings? Like, this looks so scary to me. I would be spooked. I would not want to go and enjoy and celebrate love in an environment like this that has so much pain still. So, not a great look for Justin Baldoni, but you know, when you're in a lawsuit like this, everything's going to come to the surface.
Naturally.
And he couldn't understand why. And he's put this in his book.
A couple minutes of statements from each of us to wrap with. I, again, am not surprised by the hypocrisy at all. These organizations have been coalescing around each other to hide the truth for nearly a century on so many things that I've talked about at length throughout the rest of the Hidden Faith podcast. Their cozy relationship with Israel, for instance, where they literally took land from their Arab enemies as part of the Nakba, dug up their corpses, and reburied them because they were covenant breakers, meaning people who left or were kicked out because they challenged the singular theocratic authority of a religion that pretends to be nice, but is very neutral on everything because it's burying its head in the sand until the apocalypse wipes us all out and they can use a seemingly democratic vote to institute theocracy. To institute elective theocracy where presumably women would not be allowed to be in power. Presumably gay marriage would not be allowed.
The way he treated Celeste was absolutely disgraceful. I mean, first of all, there was the bullying because of this dispute. And Steve Saros has made it very clear how he stands about Israel. He's posted stuff on his work account, you know, because that's another thing. They said they weren't showing any violent movies at the Wayfarer Theatre. Yeah. He then goes and throws like fundraisers for the IDF at the Wayfarer Theatre.
Okay.
And it's on his LinkedIn. It's on his personal LinkedIn, loads of it. Loads of it. Like, do you know what I mean? And it's like, so then she ends up having a fall in her house and she has to take time off work, which is very relevant to me at the moment because I've just had a very similar situation with my own daughter where she's had a very bad accident. And, you know, the only way to get through it is to be off work. So while she was off work, she was missed out on a promotional opportunity and she feels like they deliberately tried to get rid of her. And then once she said she was going to make a complaint, he decided to shut down the foundation.
Tough situation for sure. Dale, do you want to give a final statement?
Well, right from the start, I was very suspicious of Justin Baldoni because he was not only the big star of this movie he was in with Blake Lively, he was the director. And when you're both a big star and a director of a movie, there is the potential for abuse. And the simple fact that he claims to be a feminist, but his religion does not, in fact, make men and women equal, that just opens the door for hypocrisy. So I never believed in anything Justin Baldoni said. And I'm glad the matter is now over and both he and Blake Lively can just move on with their lives and not have to deal with this nonsense anymore.
You say that, but it feels very much like this smear campaign is ongoing, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. And we'll keep investigating this smear campaign and the lawsuit by Celeste Smith in June and any related cult actions on the Hidden Faith.
He has filed to dismiss it, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and we'll be sure to report it on the Hidden Faith, the truly independent investigation of the Baha'i faith. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you.